I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. Every week on this podcast, topics, discussions, stories from our lives. This week, the dancing of politics.
Season 6, Chapter 2.
This podcast is not always about politics, but this week it is. In November, the United States will hold what they call their midterm elections. In September, Canadian Conservatives will vote for a new national leader, who will then hope to reshape the politics of Canada. The top candidate right now in that race is Pierre Poilievre. Poilievre is a French word. Translated literally into English, it means politics forever. No, it doesn't. I just made that up. But it sounds right. Pierre Poilievre became interested in politics in his teens, and more specifically, conservative politics. There's an old saying that goes, if you're not a liberal when you're young, you have no heart. And if you're not a conservative when you're old, you have no brain. The general implication is that as we age, we become more conservative, more entrenched in our ways, more possessive, more nostalgic. These are all traits of a conservative mind. Yeah, not always, not everybody. To me, the only thing sadder than an old conservative is a young conservative. When I see young men and women with staunch conservative values, it's like they gave away their youth. They didn't even give themselves a chance to be young. I mean, is youth defined by liberalism? I think so. Is conservatism chained to the aged? I think so too. Young liberals, old conservatives. Listen, it's not a hard and fast rule. More or less just an observation. And of course, there are many exceptions on both sides, young and old. Pierre Poilievre was born June 3rd, 1979. He's now 43. Born to a 16-year-old girl who immediately gave him up for adoption. The father is not publicly known, but he is of Irish descent. Pierre was adopted by a pair of Francophone Saskatchewan school teachers. They relocated to Calgary. Suddenly, oddly, there is no information about Mr. Dad Poilievre, but Mom Poilievre is a teacher with the Calgary School Board. Pierre, which means stone or rock, and that part is true, by age 16 was selling Reform Party memberships for Jason Kenney. Remember the Reformers? Conservatives for whom the Conservative Party was not conservative enough. By 16. Wow, we lost that one early. He's not a youth. He's a conservative. And of course, Jason Kenney, the man who's at least a couple of commandments short of being a real Christian, Poilievre went on to work for Stockwell Day. There's a blast from the past. Stockwell Day, who won a by-election in 2000 and then arrived at his first press conference by jet ski wearing a wetsuit, prompting the NDP leader at the time to dub him Stock the Cocky Jock. Pierre Poilievre decided to run for office himself. He was in his mid-20s. He had relocated to the Ottawa area. He's been a member of Parliament since 2004, the same year that fellow Calgarian Stephen Harper was elected party leader. Groomed by Harper these almost 2 decades, it's no wonder that Poilievre got the Harper endorsement in his bid to become federal Conservative leader.
Our party, once again, has a leadership race underway. In this particular race, there's been a lot of speculation about whom I support or do not support and why. It's a strong field, but one candidate has garnered disproportionate attention. Pierre Poilievre was a strong minister in my government. And in my opinion, Pierre has made by far the strongest case that he is the person to do that. Thank you for listening. God bless all of you, and God bless Canada.
There is a federal Conservative leadership race for the third time in 5 years, because the federal conservatives are a fractured, combative, ragtag group of tribes. They range from traditional conservatives, devoted conservatives, up to zealots, crazies, and freedom riders. Stephen Harper was somehow adept at herding cats, but that was pre-Trump era politics, wasn't it? It's different now. Andrew Scheer was a colossal failure, awkward, sketchy, nervous-looking. And when he was chosen leader, he narrowly beat out Maxime Bernier, Mad Max, who took a snit fit afterward and broke away to start his own farther right-wing party. Next, Aaron O'Toole. He was hopeful. I mean, I'm not a fan, but seemingly he was a moderate, small-c conservative who was calling for unification. Nah, conservatives weren't interested in that. So there we were. New leadership race. Again. And the main contenders were Harper's Pinocchio, Poilievre, the reborn Patrick Brown, and the retreaded Jean Charest. And also a couple of also-rans, never heard of ya, forgot your name the moment I heard it, and I don't even care enough to look it up right now. Patrick Brown, what about that? Former MP, but also former leader of the Ontario Conservative Party. He was poised to win a landslide provincial election. If we remember 2018, there was an appetite in Ontario to get rid of the provincial Liberals. There was no question that the Conservatives would form a government. It was just a matter of how big. My neighbor's dog would have won if he decided to run. Mind you, he has some strange views on foreign policy, but nevertheless, out of nowhere, Patrick Brown suddenly out. Sexual misconduct allegations. He was reviled, booted, unceremoniously stripped of power in the middle of the night. And if you remember, it gets weirder. He's miraculously replaced as leader by a failing businessman, a Ford. Not only that, the lesser Ford. Doug, the former teenage hashish dealer, a silver-spooned, spoiled Trump admirer, part-time and borderline He won. Later that same year, Patrick Brown somehow emerges from the ashes and is elected mayor of a major city in Ontario, Brampton. They had the technology. They could rebuild him. So 4 years later, Brown throws his hat into the federal ring. Maybe he wasn't the lead candidate, but pretty strong. He was contending. He's been underestimated before. Until, again, suddenly, more accusations of impropriety, this time financial. Well, he knows the routine. Deny, deny, deny. Plead innocence. Blame somebody else. Lawyer up. None of that mattered. Brown out. You know, I don't know what to make of Patrick Brown. I've spoken to a few political science experts, and they don't know what to make of it either. Or they do, and nobody's saying. Young, smart, confident, not a wingnut. What did he do? Did he piss off somebody enough so that he keeps getting the shaft? Or is he some shifty manipulator underneath that veneer and just keeps getting caught? Can he rise up again? If so, where, when, for what? Hello, I'm Patrick Brown. I'm now running for captain of my bowling team. This just in, Patrick Brown ousted as a candidate for captain of his bowling team after being caught wearing his street shoes on the lanes. Bye-bye, Brown. So it's down to Charest and Poilievre. Jean Charest, by the way, the name Charest translates into English as carter, meaning cart driver. Yeah, that part is also true. Charest's claim is that he's the electable one. In other words, he could be elected prime minister. Poilievre could not. Maybe. It sometimes seems to me that the Conservatives might not be interested in forming a government if they have to compromise some of their far-right values. That, or they have some deep-rooted psychological malfunction inferiority complex, a fear of success. I really don't know how else to explain how they constantly seem to sabotage themselves at crucial moments. You know who could have been elected Prime Minister for the Conservatives? Peter MacKay. He lost to Erin O'Toole. Go figure. Here we are for the third time in 5 years watching the federal Conservatives pick each other apart, trying to decide who can lead them to the brink of hell, to the edge of extinction. Right now, that looks like it will be Pierre Poilievre, the scary millionaire from Calgary, who made all of his money, estimated net worth $9 million, in politics. A career politician. Doesn't really know how to do anything else. So PP becomes Conservative leader. There has been talk that the federal Liberals are rubbing their hands together in glee at this probable outcome. Champagne corks at the ready to pop when the Conservatives rubber stamp Pierre. Why? Because he is easily beatable, unelectable as Prime Minister. Or so think the Liberals. I wouldn't be so sure. I mean, personally, I shudder at the thought of it, of a PM Poilievre, but he is coming on strong. He's got a lot of money behind him. Nothing resonates more with uneducated voters than empty rhetoric, and he has mastered that. Here's one of his ads.
Now, the people with power, the media, interest groups, corporate giants, government authorities will fight tooth and nail to keep on top. So it won't be easy. But easy street leads to a dead end, and hard roads lead to the best destinations. Our destination is a Canada where the government is servant, not master. As Henley might say, you are the master of your fate. You are the captain of your soul.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about at election time. It turns out I sold my soul to some guy with horns and a pitchfork, and I'd like it back. This is the kind of meaningless language that gets people like Donald Trump elected. People like Jason Kenney, Scott Moe, Doug Ford. Say nothing, do less, get elected. Poilievre wants to make Canada a free country again. What?
We will make Canadians the freest people on earth, with freedom to build a business without red tape or heavy tax. Freedom to keep the fruits of your labor and share them with loved ones and neighbors. Freedom to raise your kids with your values. Freedom to make your own health and vaccine choices. Freedom to speak without fear, and freedom to worship God in your own way.
Make the government your servant, not your master? I look at Poilievre, I don't see servant in that guy at all. Conservatives actually have a history of mastery. I know that these words are not elements of positive change, but rather these are elements that play on the fear of people who don't understand democracy. They install loathing in the minds of the middle class. This is the Pierre Poilievre playbook. It's worked elsewhere. It could work here. If I were a liberal strategist, I wouldn't be counting my proverbial chickens just yet. This is a good spot to pause Pierre and look at American midterms. What are the midterms? Simply, they are U.S. elections that happen in the middle of the current term of the sitting president. Up for grabs are all of the seats in the U.S. House of Representatives, about a third of all seats in the U.S. Senate. Also, many states take this time to elect governors and other state officials. The midterms are in November. So what is happening right now, and this is key, the parties are running primaries. Those are basically campaigns and elections within a party to see who is going to run for election. Candidates compete for votes within their own party to pick them as the one who will run against the candidate from the other party for Congress, Senate, et al. As you may know, presidential power in the United States is not supreme. It is the approval by Congress and Senate that gets laws and bills passed. In those houses, people don't vote for what's best for Americans. They vote along party lines, just the way we do. Therefore, Democrats and Republicans fight for control of the House, the Senate, and if they are lucky, the Oval Office to complete the trifecta. Except for the Oval Office, midterm elections can really shuffle up and wreak havoc with that control. Plus, in the U.S., there is not one elected leader of a party. The sitting president is the top person of the affiliated party, Biden, Democrats. But even after that, there are a House Speaker, a Senate Majority Leader, on the other side, a Senate Minority Leader. There are party whips, party presidents, chairs of many politically affiliated committees. These people all hold positions of sway and power within the party. Yet, never before has a failed one-term president held such influence over a party after losing an election than has Donald Trump over the Republicans.
It's a collusion witch hunt.
You're a Trumper or you're not. Trump is a fundraising dynamo, so there's money control. The value of his midterm endorsements, it's up for debate, but it does seem to help some candidates. And there are many that are just afraid of him. There have been accusations of veiled political and implied physical threats if you do not support the Donald. To support the Donald, you must promote the big lie, stolen election fraud, support the January 6th insurrection, and reject any and every GOP member who doesn't also do this. This is not to say that some people haven't stood up to him. Many have said they will not regurgitate the laundry list of items it takes to back Trump. Some still have morals and values as Americans and not just Republicans. So is this a matter of 4 more years? Not of Trump, obviously, but of Trump politics? Well, in my opinion, it recently just got worse. The example I'm going to use is far from the only one, but it involves one moderate Republican congressman from Michigan, Peter Meijer. Peter Meijer wants to run for re-election, but as all hopefuls, must first contest his role as a candidate for the Republicans' primary. Meijer is the incumbent, well-liked, believes in putting country ahead of party. His opponent received a Trump endorsement and is an election denier. Has very little name recognition and no real campaign budget. Meijer seemed a shoo-in for the candidacy for the November midterms. Meijer lost the Republican nomination. But how he lost is the key. The Democrats, in the form of the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, paid for, ran an ad about the Republican candidate running against Meijer, John Gibbs. This was the message.
John Gibbs is too conservative for West Michigan. Handpicked by Trump to run for Congress, Gibbs called Trump the greatest president and worked in Trump's administration with Ben Carson. Gibbs has promised to push that same conservative agenda in Congress, a hard line against immigrants at the border, and so-called patriotic education in our schools. The Gibbs-Trump agenda is too conservative for West Michigan. DCCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
What an odd message for Democrats to run. Not sure how to describe it. It's like a fake end-run reverse attack ad, seemingly attacking Gibbs, but actually hoping to tap into a Michigan Trump conservative following and giving Gibbs way more publicity than he could ever afford himself. It's diabolical. It worked. The DCCC was betting that alerting Michigan conservatives to a Gibbs agenda would actually favor him, and Gibbs won. Meijer was one of the last hopes for moderation, bipartisan cooperation in D.C., and a return to civility in Washington. He won't even get a chance to run again for Congress. Not this time. Peter Meijer.
I know I'm going to get heat from my own side,
I never expected the other side to as well double down in a cynical ploy to put forward the candidate they think is less electable. I think the challenge in this moment, and this is not why I want to complain about my own defeat, I lost, that's on me, but is to say what type of a system are we going to have if candidates step forward and realize that they can just be ejected by both sides of the aisle.
Why would the Democrats do that? Because they feel that in November, a Democratic candidate in this area of Michigan could probably not defeat Meyer, but could easily defeat Gibbs. A political gamble. Democrats betting millions that it can work. This tactic has been widely criticized. You know, in 2020, the Democrats asked Americans to put country ahead of party. Vote for Biden because another 4 years of Trump would be bad for the USA. Voters responded. But now the Democrats are accused, rightly so, of doing the opposite, putting party in front of country. Peter Meyer, a Republican, would have been better for the country, but not better for the Democrats. So they helped Gibbs against Meyer. I'll repeat again, this is not the only case. They've done this many times during the midterm primary. It's dirty politics. And it's one of the reasons that voters are not only becoming disenchanted with politics, but with democracy itself. I recently watched an interview with a state candidate who talked about his constituents suffering and how he was going to change all that. His constituents can't afford health care and gasoline and groceries. Inflation is killing them. And in the very next sentence, he actually bragged about how he had raised $9 million in funding for his reelection. I remember thinking, hey, is anybody else hearing this? Hey, pal, why don't you just drive that $9 million down to the food bank? I'm sure that would help your constituents a lot more than you being back in office, if helping constituents is what you're really into. No, politics before people. Before I go, let's add one more spike to the heart of American politics. The growth of Christian nationalists. These are people who believe that the separation of church and state is wrong and that America should be run by a faith-based system of government. And that faith should be Christianity. And the Constitution should really be that most popular best-selling work of fiction, the Bible. They are, of course, not the only and far from the first fringe group to further divide voters. And it's not so much the fringe groups that we have to worry about. It's the bigger mainstream players and frontrunners who pander to these groups, quietly cater to their ideologies, whisper or dog whistle or code speak to them, legitimize their existence, and refuse to disavow the crazy. In America, the king of that crap is Donald Trump. In Canada, it is Pierre Poilievre. Maybe we should take a tip from Americans, and the liberals should run ads promoting Poilievre. No, not really. I mean, we have enough American politics creeping into our system as it is. Besides, it may backfire, as it may for Democrats in America. Over 60% of American voters do not want another Trump-Biden matchup in 2024. New blood, somebody, anybody different on both sides. Let's leave this entire era behind us. Many people believe that the future of the Republican Party should not be Donald Trump, and that the future of the Democrats should not be Joe Biden. I think the future of federal Canadian liberals should not be Justin Trudeau. He's had his day, and I'm hoping that the future of conservatives in Canada is not Pierre Poilievre. This is the state of politics on this continent. A lot of noise, not enough people paying attention. Over 40% of the population say they are currently actively avoiding the news. This is probably not a good time in the history of the world to be getting less information. Who wants to watch the news? It's all bad, it's all scary, it's all politics like nothing else is happening in the world. A group of concerned news gatherers, presenters, and journalists have put together something called Solutions Journalism. Google it. And it's not just happy news, but a better effort to engage people by showing information on how things can work. Solutions Journalism. I would like to see them cover solutions politics. That is to say, if anybody cares enough to invent that.
Later That Same Life is written, produced, and voiced by Larry Fedoruk. Larry Fedoruk, 37 at gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.